I want to talk about a man named Jon Watts. He's most well known as the director for the home trilogy of Spider-Man films, some of the most financially profitable superhero movies made in the past 10 years. They also seem to be the most divisive series of movies in the Spider-Man fandom. A simple search on YouTube or Twitter will show you the multitude of different opinions people have about them. You'll see things like, Watts and Holland Spider-Man is the most true to character, or Jon Watts is a Jerry Springer of directors. And more famously, Spider-Man Homecoming is a good movie but a bad Spider-Man. I'm not even going to touch that one. I personally feel like the trilogy is a mixed bag. It has some pretty interesting ideas and concepts that are executed to varying degrees of quality. Spider-Man Homecoming is a fine movie on its own merits. I've grown to appreciate the lower stakes and high school shenanigans over the years, and it was the first that fully established Peter and his supporting cast into the MCU, and it did a good job in doing so for the most part. I still can't stand Flash Thompson, but that's a different topic for another day. I remember at the time, the biggest complaint of the film were the lack of consequences. Now, that's not necessarily true. There are consequences in the movie, but they just aren't as excessive or extreme as they've been depicted in the other Spider-Man films, and I think that's okay for his first outing in the MCU. My only gripe is the visual effects work, mainly on the Spider-Man costume itself. Since they paint over the practical suit with CGI, the costume looks like it's made out of rubber in a lot of the shots. They did that in order to get rid of the creases you'd see on the suit, but it erases a lot of its visual texture. It's not my favorite interpretation of the character, but it was a good foundation for where this Peter could go in the future. Then we got Far From Home. Far From Home seems to be the film that people are the most critical of in this trilogy. I think it's whatever. I've seen it called the worst Spider-Man movie, which is just a bizarre take to me. I feel like what really drags this movie down is Spider-Man's inclusion in Infinity War and Endgame. You see, Homecoming ended with Peter defeating Vulture without the use of Stark Tech and declining Tony's offers to join the Avengers. He instead opted to do more friendly neighborhood Spider-Man stuff, which is great. Only for Infinity War to send him into space with a brand new ugly Stark suit and officially become an Avenger. I guess it couldn't really be helped since you can't really make an Avengers movie without Spider-Man at that point, and plus they weren't going to pass on those toy cells. Far From Home had the almost impossible task of retelling Peter's arc again from the first movie, on top of trying to cover Peter's grief about Tony Stark, on top of setting Peter and Michelle's romance, while also committing the biggest sin of any of these movies, taking Spider-Man out of New York City. Who the hell greenlit that idea? Outside of that, I think the red and black suit looks great, and I really like Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio, even though I wish we had more illusion sequences. I also wish his driving motivation wasn't revenge on Stark's legacy, which, I mean, it's not bad, but we kinda just covered that with Vulture. All in all, it's an alright movie that leads into a better one. No Way Home saved my life. I will never slander this movie, that is all. No, but seriously, I think this is the strongest film of the trilogy. It has more inspired filmmaking choices compared to the other two, and it works better for me as a Spider-Man story. Seeing Tobey and Andrew again was an excellent use of fan service, and their inclusion helped drive the MCU's Peter forward with his development in a way he probably wouldn't have had otherwise. Seeing the old villains was a cool novelty, especially Norman and Otto. Jamie Foxx's Electro was actually a character this time, so that was good.
I just thought you was gonna be black.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
A lot of the multiverse stuff is wonky if you think about it for longer than 3 seconds. Acting-wise, Tom Holland was at his best in the movie. The range of emotions he had to capture is nothing short of remarkable. And those are my summarized thoughts of the trilogy. Now, I just wanted to have my opinions about those films known because for the next few minutes, I'm going to be saying a lot of things about Jon Watts that may make me seem like a hater, but trust me, I'm not. I think overall these are some pretty okay movies. I just have some issues with them, just like with anything else. So I'm going to start out by saying this. Having 3 blockbusters on your belt is no easy feat, and for that, Jon Watts will always have my respect. However, I do have 2 main issues with his approach to Spider-Man: the lack of direction and style. In spite of what he said, there clearly wasn't a plan for this trilogy, and it shows. I've heard him talk about how these movies act as one giant origin story for Peter, even though he said they weren't going to do an origin of any kind during the Homecoming press tour, and Aunt May is treated as the surrogate for Uncle Ben in No Way Home, yet the prior 2 films gave her nothing to do and only used her as a punchline of hot jokes. Her learning that Peter was Spider-Man could have taken their dynamic to a different place, yet she seemed perfectly fine with it, killing most of the tension. Then, once No Way Home went to use her as an emotional anchor, I just couldn't really bring myself to care at that point. Part of this is, again, due to writing for a character that's in an interconnected universe. You're just gonna see some inconsistencies. Just ask Star Wars fans. Civil War Peter Parker gave off the impression that he learned the great responsibility lesson already. So, was he just relearning it again through these movies? I feel like most of these problems would have been remedied if they just bit the bullet and established more of his origin story to us. Sure, the fans would have bitched about it, but they bitch anyways, and at the very least we would see where this Peter Parker stands and how far along he is in his development. Now, stylistically speaking, what separates a Jon Watts Spider-Man film from a Webb or Raimi? No, seriously, I'm not even trying to be dramatic, I genuinely want to know. When I think of Spider-Man under Raimi, I picture the camera itself being a character. The audience spins and travels along with it. I picture the wacky editing and transitions and the abundance of extreme close-ups. Even the swinging scenes felt grand and triumphant. And don't get me started on my boy Mark Webb. Say what you want about the Amazing Spider-Man movies, but they're some of the best looking comic book movies out there. Swinging sequences in these are a lot more fast-paced and fluid, and they do a really great job in translating the movement of Spider-Man into live action. I think Webb is at his best when he's directing actors who aren't Jamie Foxx. He has scenes where a lot of these actors just get to play off of each other and improvise, which makes a lot of these relationships seem more organic. Meanwhile, what can I expect from a Watts Spider-Man movie? Basic coverage? Standard shot reverse shots? Almost no swinging? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just being an ass. He's heavily inspired by the work of John Hughes' coming-of-age stories and puts aspects of that into the Home trilogy. I think he's excellent at showcasing relatable high school drama, but somehow that seems like all Disney allowed Watts to do. These films don't really have a strong visual identity, and that sucks because his prior films he did to Spider-Man like Clown and Cop Car are filled with it. I just want to see what a fully realized Jon Watts Spider-Man movie would have been like without having to adhere to the MCU standards, without other creatives tampering with his plans for the character. In the end, I guess you can say Jon Watts is a good director, but a bad Spider-Man director. Okay, let me stop. But seriously, I think he managed to make 3 perfectly fine Spider-Man movies. Not always my cup of tea, but there's someone's out there. Spider-Man is a character that has many interpretations to be a fan of. Some will share the same opinion with you, some won't, but the most important thing is that we all love the character and we will be there for future stories, whether it's in the MCU, the SSU, or the fucking NAACP. In the comment section, let me know what you guys think about Jon Watts' style or lack thereof, and just your overall opinion about the video. Until then, I'll see you guys next time to hopefully talk about non-Spider-Man stuff.